All right. So today we're going to go over a couple of things. I'm going to do them slightly out of order as the assignment docs have them laid out. First thing we're going to do today is add a hurt animation so that the player gets actual feedback that the other player's been hit by their bullet. So just like always, anytime I open the computer back up, I want to test out my level and make sure everything else was working. So I play, I can run, get the ammo pickup, I can shoot. I am doing damage to him, but right now he's not doing anything. Whoops. There we go. And he can die. So it's actually still doing the looping animation because I totally forgot about that setting last time. Let's fix that real quick before we jump into the new content. So in our animation, and move that over, come on. We want to go to the actual animation state machine, and on death, if you double click that node, and here is where you can change it from looping. So on play death, over here we can see it's got loop animation set. I don't want that to loop. So just uncheck that real quick. And we can compile and test it out. Now when it dies and stays dead. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump into the new content. We want to have some sort of hurt animation play whenever the person gets hit by a bullet. Problem is, it's going to be playing all of those other animations, and what we're going to do is actually blend. We're going to get into a little bit of blending today so that we aren't just using this one state machine to control everything. So we need to go back up to the animation graph, and I'm going to go ahead and add in a new state. Or, sorry, it's going to be a montage. And what we need to do is create the montage. So in our art folder, and let me just save that change that I made. In our art folder, we're going to right click and we're going to create an animation, and we're going to do an animation montage. It asks you what skeleton. We're currently using that UE4 skeleton. I'm going to rename this to Hurt Mont. And in here, we can actually add in a bunch of different stuff. Don't really need any notifies, none of that stuff. We do need to make sure that it is playing our actual thing. So over here in the sections, we can go down here and find a hit animation. So we have a bunch of different hits from each direction. We're just going to do the basic hit. And we can drag that in and drop it down on, shoot, where is this? Up here? Yes, there we go. So now, when we play this hit animation, I can scrub through it down here just by selecting that red one and play it. As you can see, this animation was taken from something that was holding a weapon. I don't necessarily want that weapon to be there. So what we can do is get rid of the animation on the arms and just use the other animation. That'll be done up here. We go back here, we can drop in our hurt, and cannot be used in the graph because it needs to be inside a state. Well, we can go ahead and drop a new state in. And we'll just add a new state machine. We'll name this hurt. And our hurt, well, I don't necessarily want, yeah, that would be fine. I can just play our hurt animation directly, or hit animation. Drop that in, and it'll just play that hit over and over. So remember, we can go back into here and turn the hit off. But I don't really want a state just sitting there playing hit nonstop. So we can go back to the graph. Don't need that hurt animation. I want to do something what is called a blend. First thing we're going to need to do is off of that locomotion state machine, we can create a new cached pose. So we can save this current pose, or like all of the bones positions after the locomotion state machine is run, and then use that state machine, or use that save pose, use cache save pose, and as you see, it's got this weird number to it because I never really named it. Let's go ahead and rename it right now so it makes a little bit more sense. Locomotion saved pose. And over here we can use that cached pose. And off of this cached pose, we can do a blend. Now there's a bunch of different blends that we can do. What I want to do is blend poses, and that's a lot. We'll just do a basic blend. We can look at that and see how that's working. So the first one is going to be that locomotion pose, and the second pose we want to do is going to be our montage. So let's go ahead and add in our blend. Is there montage? Nope, that's montage blend time. I want to do a blend, layered blend per pone is what I wanted. There we go. Because I want to separate out the different bones. Our base pose will be that one. Our blend will need to actually blend with, whoops, I'm going to remove blend pin. And we need to blend with that hurt animation. So, why can I not think of this? Montages cannot be used. No, there is a montage thing. Let me right click here. Montage. Oh, the default slot. Duh. Oh my god. So, our default slot, we do need to create a slot and blend between that so that our montage can be selected into a specific slot. Animation. Why is that over there? That seems weird. Normally there's more stuff. Okay. Let's close out of that. We're back in the animation. Jeez. Off to a great start, eh? And we want to check out the slots. We can take a look at the montage, yes. And we see it's just using that default group default slot. That's perfectly fine. We'll just leave it on the default because we're only going to blend once. All right, animation. Default slot. And that will be going directly to the blend poses 0. And then our output blend will will go straight to the final animation. So to test this hurt animation, we can add a variable is hurt, and then in our event graph, we can do a quick test. Just when it's updating, we can do a check if is hurt. Oh, I want to get is hurt. Why is that not getting? Oh, because I didn't compile. Of course. We'll be getting that. And we'll do a branch. So, if is hurt is equal to true, well, we want to play that montage. Play montage. Over here, there's a bunch of different things we can set, but don't really care about. So we can select our montage to play. We do need to set that. Play rate is 1, starting position 0, starting section none. That's perfectly fine. And then after, while that's telling it to play, we want to set is hurt back to false. So then we compile this. And when we do is hurt, we see nothing's happening. That's because our layered blend per bone has no bones set. So down here, there's this branch filters. We need to add a filter. And these will be the bone names. These bone names have to be the exact name, and if they're wrong, it just won't work. So we're probably going to want to open up our skeleton pretty much alongside the animation so that we can take a look at which bones we want to blend from. If I do root, so that's just capital R, OOT, and double check that. Oh, lowercase r, of course. Root. And check that out. We compile, and it broke because this default slot was never set up with any input. We need some sort of input. So our locomotion could be the input directly to that default slot. And is hurt, I see nothing's happening still, because that is hurt is never blended properly. There's a note on here. Base pose is visible, but ignored. Yes. Base pose, default slot. I want to get our animation output. And give me 1 second. All right, we're back. Now that I remember how to do this. So, we're kind of doing things a bit out of order in this aspect. In our hurt montage, we are going to need to add a, oh, there we go. All right, and this one's unpaused, yep. All right, we are going to need to add a new slot. So, we need to open up the slot manager, and that's going to be, leave off the skeleton. No, skeleton went in. Oh my god, already. What the heck? So, there we go. Open animation slot manager. There we go. So we need to add a new slot. We're just going to call this standard. We're going to make a new group. And this will be our hurt group. We want to make sure the standard slot is inside the hurt group, which you cannot reorganize it like that. We have to right click and select the group we want it. There we go. And for this montage, we don't want default group, we want the hurt group. And I see hit. It's right there. There we go. Moving back and forth, it's going to drag that fine. All right. And move that down. Going back to the animation. Get rid of that. That was incorrect. This one's good. Then we need to do our slot. And there is a new slot, but it's not showing up in here. So I need to compile. And that slot is still not showing up. What is going on? Hurt montage. Make sure I save that. Make sure you save changes to the skeleton asset. Then in here, come on. It is just showing that slot default slot. Well, I'll go ahead and just add that. And we can do that. Just pass that into the blend. When I copy and paste that use cached pose, we're going to pass that into the slot. We compile now. Is hurt is still not doing anything. We'll check this one out. Layered blend per bone. Root, blend depth, 0. I'm going to change that to 1. I am still doing this wrong because that is default slot. And that should be a different slot. Why is my other slot not showing up? Huh. So, I'm going to close out because that animation or that slot that we just created is not showing up. I will have to close and reopen. Okay, let's open that animation blueprint back up. And now I should have that slot here. Still not showing up. So let's open up that montage one more time. And what? Oh my god, computer's going crazy. There we go. So we have this group, we have this slot standard, and for some reason that's not showing up. I have this animation set to that standard group. So that should be correct. Just scroll down, double check everything. Nothing needed to change there. Okay. Slot. Keeps saying the default slot.
You can change the slot name by creating that node, and then where it says slot name on the right hand side under settings, you can change it from there.
Oh my god. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, so there's apparently this drop down thing to change what slot it's set from. That was driving me insane. Okay. One more try. And is hurt. Still not doing anything. Let's go to our event graph. And I'm never actually setting. If we're taking a look at this, when I press is hurt, it tells it to play that montage. But the montage is not syncing up or blending right now. Back to the anim graph. I see it's using the locomotion there, passing it through that slot standard, and it should blend to that. Blend weights of each layer. The branch filters. We have root, blending depth of 1. Let's do a 0, so it starts off from the very base. And is hurt, still not playing. Do you see something wrong with it? I'm sorry about that. It's set to the hurt group standard. Save. Animation, saving that. Blending. That's set to root. And our animation event graph is telling it to play that montage, hurt montage. Oh, I wasn't getting a skeletal mesh. Tell it to play. Get owning component. Pass that in there. Compile. There we go. All right. So we're telling it to play a montage, but we're never telling it what mesh to play it on. So Isert will play like that. What we want to do now is make it so that the arms aren't going up like he's holding a gun. So back in our anim graph, where we were setting up this branch filters, there's a few different things you can do. This blend depth right here, you can tell it to blend down the skeleton a certain amount or even get rid of certain nodes. For example, if I wanted the arms not to move, I could go down here and select the top of the arm, so upper arm L. And let's just worry about the lower arm. So let's do lower arm L. You can actually right click, copy the bone name so that you don't have to type it. Then go back to the animation, paste it in, and by changing this blend depth from a 0 to a -1, it'll actually remove that bone from the blend. So now when it's hurt, I see it's not blending any, because I removed that initial root add. I wanted that root in there so that it does play like normal. So root, we'll do 0. And for that lower arm L, we'll do a -1. Compile. Now when it's hurt, his left arm doesn't move like he's holding a gun anymore. So it's just kind of like his body is getting hit. We also want to take out that right arm. Well, the skeleton's name pretty much mirrored, so lower arm, instead of _L, we will do an _R. And we can compile, save. Is hurt is now just doing his body's reaction. His hands aren't going up like he's holding that gun anymore. Although I left that as 0, so it was still doing that right arm. There we go. Okay. Now that we have that hurt animation all set up, we need to have our game tell it when it's been hurt. So in the event graph, I was doing this on every single update. That's not good. This was just for testing purposes to tell it to play that montage in here. What we can do is add a check called try get pawn oh my god. Let me do the non-context. Get pawn owner. It's called try get pawn owner. Now this will return an owner if it's not in Persona. Persona is just doing an update inside here for this preview animation. So if that return value is valid, and we'll do the question mark is valid, oops. Move this around a little bit so that I get more space. Move those over. Make sure I'm connecting the exec. If it is valid, that means we're in game. We don't want to do this debug stuff while we're in game. We only want to do it when we're not. So compile, test it out in here, and that's still working. But now we can add the functionality for our game. So let's minimize that. And we're going to want to, inside our base character, that's where the hurt is being handled, we have the killable. In the event graph, well, down here is when it's taking damage. So after we apply the damage, we can tell our anim to play montage. I believe it's just called play slot animation. We'll connect that in between that branch. And down here we need a specific animation to play. Well, we can do that hurt. Hurt montage, slot node name. Well, we have that slot called standard. And blend in time, blend out time, play rate, loop count, just whatever. We'll leave that loop count as 1. Now that we've got that hooked up, want to make sure that my map is open. We press play, and it's still not playing that montage. So something went wrong, and our montage wasn't playing. We're telling it to play right here. This slot node name is probably wrong, because we didn't put in the group part. The group part was hurt group and then standard. If we take a look at how it was set up over here, nope, in the animation, I mean. In the animation, down here, we have this slot called standard, but the slot name is actually hurt group dot standard. So back to the character base, slot node name, we need hurt group dot hurt group dot standard. Compile that. And that blend time is a little bit high. I'm going to drop that down to 0.125, and the blend out will be also 0.125, because this animation is pretty short. Compile that, save, and give it a try. Nope, still not playing. Fantastic. I am just dying this lecture. Let's check if that play slot is being hit, which I believe it is. And play. So it's telling it to play. However, it's for some reason not playing. Let's stop this. Instead of doing play slot animation, let's do play or montage play. That's the one I was looking for. I don't know why they reversed the words on that one. Montage play. Connect the execs up. Select the montage. And it's straightforward. We don't have to enter that slot name or anything. Compile, save, play, and voila, now it's playing. Okay. And it dies and doesn't get back up and stays dead. All right. Moving on to the next step. Let's go ahead and add a reticle to the HUD. What we're going to want to do is create a new material. Whoops. And we will call this reticle. Probably going to want to do an M underscore just like the others. Open that up. And we've been in this editor before. First thing we're going to want to do is do a texture sample. Texture sample. And we can select what texture we want. Well, there is one called crosshairs, so T crosshair. Let's do just that. Notice it's white and black. So if I pass this in there right now, I see it's going to draw just like that, as opposed to how it normally would. So I want it to actually be transparent. So down here we can actually, on the reticle, the material itself, we don't want opaque. We don't want it lit either. We want translucent. And we can change that from default lit to unlit, so that it just outputs the color properly. Now let's leave it lit for now, just so that we can see it. Yeah. I believe there is, no, that's fine. All right, let's go ahead and save. And let's make sure that we can draw this to the HUD. So over in our HUD HUD blueprint, which we call just my HUD, we have a couple of things over here. There's event tick. There is another event called draw HUD. There's this event called event receive draw HUD. This is when your UI draws usually. So it gives us a size X and size Y of the actual screen. What we want to do is simply draw the material, draw material. We'll just do draw material simple. Which material do we want to draw? Well, we want to draw our M underscore reticle. And down here we have an X, a Y, a W, and H for how big we actually want this to be, and where on the screen we want it to be. Well, let's just do it in the center of the screen. So taking this integer, we can do divide, and I want float int over, just add the float first, divide float by float, and it'll convert. So that float divided by 2, and same thing for the other one. Whoops. Select both of these, copy, you move that up there, paste down here, clean up the nodes, and that's Y, that is X. So this is going to be the how big we want this quad, or how big we want the reticle. Well, let's just go down here and say we want it 32 pixels big. 32 by 32. Just for testing, and we'll compile that, save it, and check that in game. So I press play, and I have this big gray quad on the screen. Clearly, that's not what I want for a reticle. We have to do some more stuff in the material to get it to actually be transparent for that time. So over here, the white has a value of 1, the black has a value of 0. So if I wanted opacity, well, opacity 0 would be faded out. So if I pass that directly in, save that, and show that in game, I see it's fading out kind of the part that I didn't want it to fade out. Well, if I know it's just I want an inverse of it, I can do 1 minus, and it brings me that. So now, save. I can press play, and now I see it's actually the shape I want and fading out the parts that I didn't. Well, I also want the ability to set a specific color. So over here, instead of doing it that way with a 1 minus, I can do an add. And what do I want to add? Well, I want the ability to actually create my own stuff in it. I want to pass in a specific variable. So I can go ahead and save this. Give it a moment to update. And under material, no. Let me just reference that other material real quick. So we did the static color. Where is... Oh, right. You just do it in that. Right. So right click, we can add a vector parameter. Right up here in the parameters. We can do a dynamic parameter. or a vector parameter. So the vector parameter is what we're going to be adding in. This will be the color. So we need to actually name the vector parameter. With that node selected, we can give it a name. This will be just simply color. Let's set it to a default color. Let's say half red, half green. And down here in this preview plane, instead of showing a sphere, I can show it on like a flat surface or different things like that. I'm going to pass in this base color. And I see it's now got that yellow tint to it. If I switch it from lit to unlit, I see it's showing up just totally black. Because I'm passing, there is no base color when it's unlit. So instead of sending that over to that, we can do it into what is called an emissive color. And we'll save. Give that a quick play. And we see that our reticle's on screen showing up. But when I shoot, it's way off course. We're going to need to do some math to actually shoot at what we're looking at. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Close out of those materials now that we've got a color and everything all set. Oh, before I close out of that reticle, I wanted to change one thing about the color parameter. Oh, no, I already renamed that. Okay, we're good. We can close that. And our HUD is the one that's actually just drawing that reticle, and it knows where it is on the screen, which is just going to be the very center of the screen. So, from our player, let's take a look at how we were shooting. Close out all this. Open up our player, my player controller. Well, we press, we do an input action shoot, and that tells that character base to start attack. So let's open up our character base. And our start attack is up here. That just tells our animation system to start attacking. But down here is where we're actually getting that event to start shooting. This tells our weapon to shoot. And down here is where we're making that transform for where to shoot. Our current rotation, which is going to control the direction that it goes in, is just doing our forward vector. Well, that's not exactly what we want. We want to shoot it at the center of the screen, whatever that point is actually looking at. We're going to need to do a ray trace to figure out where that is in the world coordinates. So, let's go ahead and, instead of saying actor rotation, we want our base character to operate differently than our player itself. It's one of the reasons why we created that base and player character. For our player character, instead of doing that normal shoot, so we can say shoot. we're going to want to do our other shooting. We're going to need to pass that information to the weapon. Our weapon is just going to shoot it wherever this transform tells it. So we're going to need access to our HUD from our player. And our player will need to grab the HUD when it begins play. Get HUD, which actually we don't even need to do that since we're just shooting to the very center of the screen. We just need to shoot it directly at the center and shoot a ray out from that. So when this receives the event to shoot, we're going to need to do a ray trace, ray cast. And we see down here in the collision, here's the line traces. So we can do just a simple line trace by channel. And we can check out what channels we want. We can tell it what actors to ignore. Well, we want it to ignore the self, which is already checked down here. Don't need to actually debug draw it, that's fine right now. We need to give it a starting and end point. Well, our start point will be our shooting point. So that's our socket location from the animation. So get, over here, I can show inherited values, and we can grab our anim right here. Anim, and just looking back at this base class, we see its get socket location. I'm going to just copy and paste that since that's already filled out. And paste it in right here. So our starting point is going to be that gun. But that's not the actual starting point we need. We need a starting point of the screen itself and the camera's forward. So to simplify this even more, instead of doing that line trace and everything and doing all the complicated extra stuff, which we will do later to find out where the end point is, we want to find this end point, which is going to be the center raycast. So for a raycast, well, we start from the very center of the object, or center of the gun, and we want to cast a ray straight at the ground, or straight at the center of the screen. So delete, delete, simplify this down a bit. Our starting will be our camera position. Oops. Camera. Get world location. And then our ending point, well, that's simply the camera's forward. Get forward vector. And we don't want it to just go that one unit, that this forward vector, because this is a total of just unit spaces. we need to multiply this by some value so that the ending point is going to actually hit something. So we can drag off that and simply multiply. And we're just going to scale it up by a float. So let's say it's going to cast a ray out 1,000 centimeters, which is only 10 meters. Let's do it one bigger, 10,000 centimeters. There we go. All right. We will compile. And with this new information, we have a return value to let us know if it did hit anything. And if it does, we know our actual endpoint from the hit. We can break the hit result, which break is just another way of expanding a structure. We have this location right here of where it hit. So using this location and using our weapons location of where we want to fire, we can figure out what direction our bullet needs to travel, because our bullet is not coming from the center of the screen. So we can get that anim stuff, myanim, and we can get that socket location. Just going to copy those back again. And we now have this location minus this location will give us a vector. So vector minus vector of the direction that we want to shoot. And from that, we want to say make rotation from X, because our X is our forward. And jumping back to that character base to check out where we're shooting from, we just see we call that current weapon, shoot, making that transform using this stuff. So we just created a new rotation for it, but we still need that make transform to send in to our weapons shoot function. I'm going to copy these. So the shoot and the make transform and the current weapon, copy those, pull those over, and lay those out right here. Click off them so I can clean it up a little bit. So our weapon's going to shoot. After we make this transform down here, well, we have our rotation and the location. And once again, the scale doesn't matter because we're auto-scaling the bullets in that begin play. And we can do true, straight to shoot. So when it's false, it'll actually no longer shoot. Well, I don't want it to do that. I just want it to shoot off wherever I'm looking. Compile, save. Let's test it out real quick. So we press play. This time, if I put that cursor directly over his head, I see that the bullet's not showing up. So clearly that raycast is wrong. Or, if I press play again, try and shoot at the ground, I see the bullets coming at me. So definitely something is backwards. Let's double check that again. Start is camera's position. Forward vector is the end. Yeah. And socket location is the starting point. Yep. And making a rotation from that minus that. Let's try just reversing this. So instead of going to that top node, bring that one to the bottom. And that location of the hit in the world space where it will not penetrate. Save that. Give it a quick play. And now the bullets are shooting straight. But if you take a look at it, it's going to that top left corner of what we're drawing. So that's not the center of the reticle. What we need to do is inside our HUD, we can offset it so that the center of the reticle is the actual center of the screen. Oops, not the material. I wanted the HUD blueprint. So here, where we're drawing it directly at the center, I want to make sure that this is the top left corner of where it's going to start drawing. So I need to offset it a bit after we're doing that divide. So we're dividing by 2. We also need to subtract float minus float. $32, but we only need half that. Because this thing is 32 by 32, we only want to do it by 16. So we'll just copy and paste that. Compile, save. If we start playing again, and I shoot, it hits direct center of that actual reticle, regardless of where I'm looking. So, look up there, it's going straight through that enemy. So, clearly that raycast is not hitting this enemy at all, because it's hitting the floor way behind him, much further after him. Let's double check our raycast. And that raycast, we were ignoring ourselves, but we weren't telling it what to actually care about. So, trace channel is selected on visibility. So that should be fine. And our out hit, well, let's just add a breakpoint on there. Oops. I'll do it on the branch. Okay. Save. Give this a quick play again. Clearly on top of the enemy. and we hit something, we can check what that hit is down here. Hit actor. Actor hit by the trace. It says none. Step into. So it says we were hitting the floor. Interesting. Trace channel. So down here, I can actually click this to check against more than just the basic shapes. So that trace complex will set to true. Over here, if I press play, and we check out that trace complex, step into one more time, check out what we're hitting now, still says the floor. Fantastic. Oh my God. Give me a second. Yeah, a little bit. What was that?
Turn the debugging draw on.
Oh, debug draw, yeah. I could turn on the debugging draw. I'll do persistent. File, save. And we're going to try and see where this drawing is happening. So if I shoot right there, I want to remove that breakpoint. So it'll just run. And I see they're going straight through that enemy. But for some reason, still not hitting him. So this character base. No, that's world settings. I'm going to check inside the character base to make sure he's got the correct collision settings on. Oops. Capsule isn't what we want. We want the mesh. And down here, basic character mesh, not changed. Trace is set to ignore visibility. Oh, that did get changed. That's weird. Okay, so that would be a problem. That was on character base, right? What we're going to do is just change this to block all dynamic. Actually, no, I want custom. Oh, let me switch it back just to check the correct settings. So character mesh is ignore pawn, ignore vehicle. Okay. So we'll do custom. And I do want this visibility to actually trace. We'll compile. Make sure that our capsule component doesn't have that set. Capsule is generating hit, but it is also ignored. Okay. Yeah. So once again, just to reiterate, that mesh inside the collision, switch it to custom, and make sure that it is blocking on visibility. So we'll save all. Give it one more play. And that might have missed him. Come on. Let's switch it. In the function that we're using, where we're doing that raycast. Instead of visibility, let's do camera. Compile, save. Give it a play. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. So, as you can see with that debug drawing, it was just a simple drop-down thing to select it, and now I can see exactly where that hit stopped and where it selected that line, and we can see how far it goes on afterwards as well, drawn in green. So we have our hits now going directly towards our cursor, whatever it's over, instead of shooting beyond them now. Next thing we want to do is have our cursor change colors when it's over an enemy. Well, what we're going to need to do is basically this line trace again, but we want to do it every frame. So on the tick, we can actually go here, and after our parent ticks, we want to run this line trace once more, find out what it hit and when it hit, or what object it hit, to figure out all that information. So I'm going to just drag this down here. Nope, I don't want to do that. I wanted to break links. And I'm going to just select that stuff. So pretty much everything except that event shoot. I'm going to paste that down here. Oh my god, I selected it all, but I didn't copy it. All over the place. So copy, paste, move that over, bring our event tick down, drag that in. So on tick, it's now going to do this line trace, and this branch will also tell us if it hit something. Well, when it does hit something, we want to know what it hit. What I can do is check the actor it's hitting and say actor has tag. I want to know if I'm over an enemy or not. The tag we want to look for is simply pawn. Because if I check the character base, down here in the actor, down here there's all the way at the bottom with the character base selected, we have this option to add tags. Well, let's add a tag. Simply do pawn. Compile. Save. And now, if this actor does have a tag of pawn, we can do another branch. So if A, this line trace hits something, we check that actor has a tag. We can do a branch to know whether we want to set it over an enemy or not over an enemy. I need to now get the HUD from our controller. Oh, get controller. Get HUD. Why is the HUD not popping up there? Well, I know there is only one HUD in the game, so what I can do is add a way of storing that into a variable on the start. So I can just simply add a variable. We'll call it my HUD. Variable is of type. Well, it is of type my HUD. And we just want a reference to it. So on begin play, we can find our HUD, find our class of type. Oh, actors class. No. Why is get HUD so hidden? Well, let's check player controller. Should have a reference to the HUD. Rendering applications. What the heck? You remember how to get the HUD? Yes. The blueprint for it does create that widget. I could get the widget, I guess. No, I don't want the widget. Yeah, so our HUD is over here. Receive draw HUD. And at the beginning of the play, we're creating that widget and adding it to a viewport. We have our player owner right here, and we could actually set that HUD variable from our player owner. Set my HUD, and it won't pop up until I've made sure to compile this. Since I added this new HUD, we'll compile and make it public so that we can modify it in there. Compile. So after we add that widget to the viewport, we can set my, come on. Set HUD. There's a function for getting the HUD right in here. This is just the player owner. We can cast it and then set it. Cast to my player controller. And don't want the player controller, we want the actual player itself. get pawn get controlled pawn. From there we can cast to player character. And from the player character, when that happens, we can set my HUD finally. And the HUD we want to pass in is self, because this is the HUD script. And we compile that, save it, and down here we can actually set the different colors for the HUD. What we want to do is add a couple of functions for changing the color. So we'll do new color, set vertical color, and we're going to want to take in a color. So we add a new parameter for an input. Whoops. Oh, crap, collapsed. Sweet. Well, we don't need those two because that's wrong. And we'll just say color. This will be of type color. We compile. And we need to actually tell our reticle to switch what color we're using. For that, we need to create what is called a dynamic material instance. So in our event graph of our HUD, because remember, our HUD is just drawing that material right here. We want to create a new variable, and I'm going to hide the inherited variables. New variable for our material to draw. And we'll call it just reticle. Reticle mat. This will be of type material instance dynamic. After we've set the HUD in the player, we can do create dynamic material instance. And it wants a parent asset to start from. Well, that's just simply our material that we created. M underscore reticle. And we need to make sure to set our reticle material equal to that. So now that we have a dynamic material, we can go back down to where we're drawing a material, and we want to make sure that we're drawing our dynamic one. Compile, save. In our set reticle color, we're going to be getting our dynamic material instance, and we're going to be setting vector parameters. So set that vector parameter value. And we do that in there. And pass in that color, which auto gets converted to whatever value we choose. Our parameter name was simply color. Compile, save. Back in our player character, we can actually tell our HUD to set that reticle color for both of these. So I'm going to want one for true and one for false. All right. So when it's not over anything, I want this false, which means that it didn't hit anything, like if you're looking up at the sky, to also set it to a safe color. Let's go ahead and create a couple colors for it to be set to. So we'll do new variable, variable type, color, and we'll rename this to safe color. I'm going to duplicate this, and instead of safe color 0, we're going to name this danger and we'll say it's going to be dangerous when it's over an enemy. It's safe when it's not over an enemy or hitting anything. We can compile, save, and now test that out. Problem is we didn't set these different colors yet. So safe color, let's go with blue is pretty normal. So let's do a 0.75 and add some green in, so 0.5. Oops. Why is, oh, because these are 256, right? So 122 and add some more blue. Let's do 122 as well. Compile. And the danger color, of course, red. Let's do 225. Compile that. Save it. And we can test this out. I press play. And I see I still have that debug draw on, so it's drawing that like crazy. Whoops. Let me uncheck that debug draw. I'm going to turn off the other one that we have for shooting. Compile, save that. Give that a play. And when we're over our enemy, it's red. Okay. And we can also shoot up and down now as opposed to just everywhere. But if you notice, when I'm trying to shoot up, nothing happens. That's because we never did that raycast or we're doing that raycast, but it's not over anything to actually aim at. So for that case, we want to just do the normal behavior of shooting forward. So for the event shoot, come over here when it's not hitting anything, we need to make sure that it's still shooting. Well, we can simply just call our parents function that just shoots forward. So we'll right click. In terms of the direction that I want it, I don't necessarily want just forward. I can actually use the camera's forward vector. So from false, oops, I'm going to copy these because we will need to call that shoot and make a new transform. Paste that in there. And connect up the exec for the position I'm going to shoot at. Same one as up here. And the rotation we want to look at, well, that's our camera's forward. So, camera, get forward. Oops. And I need to make that into a rotation, doing that make forward X, or make rot from X. And we can pass that one in. Compile, save, and test that out. So I look up, I shoot, and it shoots perfectly fine. All right. Did you guys see that? So when I shoot this guy, if I shoot, sorry, I'm not used to the inverted mouse. I see that it's turning red still, even though my character is on the ground. And when I shoot it, he's popping up. So, a couple of things we need to do when a character dies. We want to make sure that it's no longer can be attacked. Well, we can just turn the collision off after he's dead. So, down in the event graph, I'm going to just look for any damage. Any damage is playing that hurt montage and setting it dead. One other thing, I don't necessarily want to play this every time he's hit, because if he's playing the dead, it's going to overlap a little, but that's fine. Set collision, and I can do set collision enabled. And new type off of the mesh is just disabled. And set collision. So I've done that on the mesh. And I want to also just do it on the capsule component as well. Compile, save, give it one more go. Kill this guy real quick. And he's dead. And I try and shoot. Same spot that I was. No more enemy on there. Alright. So, kind of stumbled at the beginning there, but hopefully you guys were able to bear with it and get through. Any questions about some of the stuff we did today? Nope. Oh, fantastic, Robert. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording then.